Hi everyone, it's Kerry back with you today. Before I get into today's project, I wanted to send out my sincere thanks to you all so much for your kind messages and heartfelt prayers for Rennie and her family whilst they go through this difficult time after the loss of Larry. Sadly, as many of you would know, our fur babies come into our life and become big parts of our family, and it's always very difficult when we have to say goodbye to them. But she's doing okay, and I'm sure she'll be back and crafting with us all shortly. She has been reading your messages, and she's very grateful to have so much support in this great community of ours. So for today's project, we're going to be making some faux German vintage paper measuring tape. That's a bit of a mouthful. So I do have some of this authentic vintage measuring tape. I do sell it in the shop. It is becoming harder and harder to find, and obviously when things become harder to find, they also tend to become a bit more expensive. So today we're going to be making some DIY German vintage paper measuring tape. So for today's project you will need some supplies. So I've been using just some very thin, it's about 50 GSM, brown packing paper. Now this has got a sort of a glossy side, you can see that there, and a matte side. You could, if you wanted to, just use scraps. These are like the sides that I've cut off book pages, and I know it's a lot lighter, but because these are vintage book pages, they tend to have that vintage feel anyway. You'll also need some ink. I'll be using a little spatula to make the lines on my tape. And you'll need some number stamps. If you happen to have the Witchcraft Documented stamp set, they work perfectly for this project, but if not, just any number stamps will work fine. You may just need to adjust the size of your strips to suit your number stamps. So here I have a strip of the authentic German tape, and you can see that there's a line, then a section with numbers, a line, a section with numbers. And to be honest, I tend to only use the bit with the numbers on. So whilst I'll still use all this other tape, it tends to get buried and hidden under other things. So the good thing about making your own is you can just concentrate on making the sections with the numbers if you feel like that's what you're going to use the most of. So I'm just going to pop these to the side, and I'm going to bring in some brown paper strips. I've cut mine to approximately a centimetre, but I've eyeballed it, I haven't measured it. And if I lay that proper tape over the top, you can see like there's about a millimetre difference there. So I'm not worried about that. So I've just brought in a mat that I can stamp on, so you can see I've been using this for this project. Now I also have this set of number stamps. I think I picked this up either at Typo or at a craft fair, but I've had it for a very long time, and it's got these sort of typed number stamps in here. Now, if you're going to have something like this, if I was to use these two stamps together, there's a very large gap in the middle, and these are not all centralized on their little stamp platform. So if you're using a stamp like this, you sort of have to gauge it and eyeball it and hope that you sort of get it in the right spot, like that. But I think it works just fine. So if you can find some little number stamps like that, they will work for this project as well. And I do have the Witchcraft Documented stamp set, so I'm going to use that. So here on the authentic piece, you'll notice that the top number is representative of the metre that they're up to, and the bottom number is representative of the amount of centimetres we're up to in that metre. So this piece of tape was torn off at 3 metres and 30 centimetres. So the next number is 3 metres and 40 centimetres, 3 metres, 50 centimetres. So the bottom number will always be a number that ends in 0, so 10, 20, 30, 40, that sort of thing. So if you want to represent something fairly authentic, you'll need to use those 10 numbers in increments of 10 underneath. To create my little line here, on the genuine tape, you'll notice that the line does not go over the edge of the paper. It's just like a little dash. So to create that line, I'm just using the edge of my palette knife and I'm rolling it in my ink, and then I'm just rolling it underneath my number. So I get that sort of look there. Then I'll take the 0 and I'll pick another number and just roughly eyeballing it. I was a bit off there. About there. So you can see I was quite off there. But you can get the general idea of what it's supposed to look like. So if you're using the Witchcraft documented stamp sets, this number here, the 8106, happens to have a 10 in the middle, which you can use for the lower number. And then it has all of these other numbers you can use to create the upper number. So for example, let's go with this one. So I'm inking up the whole stamp. You could mask off the stamp and just have it ink up the numbers, but A, I'm too lazy and can't be bothered, and B, this is only wide enough for 2 numbers to fit on it anyway, so I'm not worried about it. Now it's clear so I can see where I'm stamping, and I'm just going to pop my stamp down so I get my first 2 numbers. Then I'm going to create my line. And then I'll pick a different stamp for my other 2 numbers. So I might just pick this 29. And again, my block is clear so I can see straight through where I'm stamping. So I get that sort of look there. So once you've torn off your strips, it's actually quite quick to make them in bulk. Now when I've created these, I haven't measured the distance between each one because I figure I'm probably only going to use them, the little number part, and I'll just tear off a piece and use it like that. And that's how I'll use my bits. So I'm just creating numbers every sort of so often down my strip so I can tear them off and use them. So I'm going to go ahead and make them sort of in a bit of an assembly line. And I'm starting with my 10. So next I'll come in with my little palette knife here and I'll make my line just above my 10. So I'm just inking up the edge of the palette knife and then rolling it along the paper. So now I can go in with my other stamps and I'll just pick 2 numbers randomly along the stamp and pop those onto my strip just above my line. So there we go. Whoops, I missed one. That's better. So now I can just go along and tear these off and use them in my projects when I'm ready. So here I've got a piece of book paper and this is a bit wider than what I would like to use. So I'm going to try and stick close to this edge because this edge has the sort of patinaed look about it. And I'm just going to go ahead and repeat the same process. So I'm using my stamp that's got the 10 in the middle first. I'm just keeping that 10 close to this edge. It doesn't matter that the 6 is on there as well. Then I'll go in with my palette knife and pop my lines in, making sure that I'm going above my 10. And then I'll just come in making sure the number that I want is against this line. So then I can just come in with a paper trimmer. Now this is too long, so I'm just going to cut that there first. And then just cutting off that extra bit so I'm left with just these numbers. So if it's not quite right, you can obviously go back in and trim it a bit more. There we go. And then they're ready to just tear apart and use in the project as well. So there we go. I've got this little card here And I can just pick one of my little bits of tape, just tear a little section off, and then just attach that to my project, and I think it looks pretty good. So there we go, just a quick little tutorial today showing you how you can make some of that vintage tape for yourself. Now if you prefer the vintage tape, we do have some in the shop, and if you wanted to grab yourself a set of the documented stamps, I will leave a link to both of those in the description box below. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you again next time. Bye!